My name is Ryan Miner. I work for CarePlus Home Health in our business development department. I've been with the company for 1 year. Our website is careplusinc.com. We do home care in Montgomery County, and I think we do it really well. We have been in business for 25 years. This year, we are celebrating our 25th anniversary, and that occurred back in January. And it's an exciting time for all of us, although we are navigating the extremely complex issues of COVID-19. And there's no playbook. There's no playbook at all for how we operate in this unusual climate, especially for healthcare professionals, for home care, for home health, for memory care. This month of June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, and it's a special month because most of us in the home care field work with clients and patients and people who have dementia or some form of Alzheimer's. And I wanted to bring on today, and I have the opportunity to talk with Beth May and Carrie Brister of Olney Memory Care. And we have a long time partnership with Olney. We are friends of theirs. We think that they are fantastic. They're an excellent community out in the Olney region, and they do memory care. And the topic of the discussion today is how families ultimately choose a memory care community for their loved ones. It's so important, and I understand it from a very personal perspective, that when families realize that either mom or dad or their aunt or uncle or someone that they know is stricken with Alzheimer's or dementia or some other form of that, when is the time? When is the right time to reach out to a community? And what are the right questions to ask? So I want to first welcome Carrie and Beth from Olney Memory Care. It's really a pleasure to have you join us on this new adventure, this Zoom podcasting, all of that, whatever we want to call it. But I think it's most important that we get some good content out there today. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. Carrie, you're relatively new to Olney Memory Care. And it's exciting. I think that you have such a dynamic team over there, and I think I'm excited for you. I know a little bit about you in your bio, but I want you to share with us a little bit about your experience, and then you can send it over to Beth.
Sure. Well, Ryan, I've been here at Olney Memory Care for about 10 weeks, so pretty short. I arrived right at the beginning of the whole COVID situation, so kind of dove right into a little bit of COVID chaos, as I like to call it. So it was a little different. Trying to navigate learning residents, learning families, learning staff all at the same time was a little challenging, but we have done it well so far for this several weeks. My background is actually in memory care. I started my career 24 years ago as a nursing assistant, went to nursing school, fell in love, got married and had a baby, and then decided I wasn't going to be a nurse anymore. So still followed in my pursuit of healthcare, but have worked in administration, healthcare administration for the rest of my time. I joined Olney about, like I said, 10 weeks ago so that I could reconnect with families, reconnect with residents, and own that part of my day.
Thank you for all that you do and for the families that you serve and for being an advocate for so many people who are certainly new to this, and for family members. It's a lot of work. Beth, you used to work in home care, and now you are working over at Olney Memory Care. You have been there for 8 months, 9 months?
Oh, not quite yet. About 6.5 months. So getting there, but it's been a very short 6.5 months, especially with COVID here. Yes, the background, I got into home care about 2 years ago, really wanting to help seniors stay in their homes. I saw what happened with my grandma, 15, 20 years ago when she first moved from her first apartment to an assisted living, and what that transition was like, and not knowing what was available to help ease her transition in terms of a companion that could be brought in to help in a big community. And while I was in home care, I really enjoyed working with the families, talking with them on the phone about their problems, seeing our clients in the hospital and those that needed us, and really thought more about how I wanted to spend my time. And it was really with seniors and their families, and having those relationships is a better part of my day. So I took a big hop, not a big hop, but a quick hop over here to Olney Memory Care. And this is the first community I visited a few years ago when I got into senior care. And I was just so impressed by the warmth of everyone I met, how well all of the staff knew each other, the residents who I saw walking in the halls, and also I fell in love with the design of our community. It is truly the best of both worlds. So in memory care, we have the ability to have our residents be independent in their own rooms, in their own neighborhoods, so to speak. We have 4 different neighborhoods within our community, but then they can leave their neighborhoods and come out to a central area where they can walk around and move freely, securely, be involved in the neighborhood center and activities and things they like to do, or go outside and be safe and secure. So it's just a super community.
I agree. And always greeted with a smile when I walk in, even if it's a really busy day. I know that CarePlus has provided home health aides inside of Olney Memory Care a number of times. And that's important relationships that we have with memory care and with home care, and it aids and assists and helps families. So what I want to do is begin by talking about how this decision is made and about how families approach Olney memory care or any memory care community, because most of the time when there's an incident that occurs that sparks a family's interest, to say mom or dad or aunt or uncle, they need an additional level of care. What is usually the impetus behind them reaching out? What specific events have you seen in your careers that inspire people to pick up the phone or do a quick Google search and say, okay, I'm going to call these folks out here in and Olney and just get some answers to some questions? What is that moment?
Well, unfortunately, often it is based on a crisis moment. We do have folks that have pre-planned and are kind of forecasting their future and their loved one's future. But unfortunately, many times we have folks that come to us that have been in some sort of crisis, such as, an acute illness or an injury, which has resulted in hospitalization and or rehab, skilled rehab. And in those situations, families are very quickly realizing that their loved one is no longer safe in their environment.
Yeah.
So between the caseworkers in the nursing communities, ourselves, the families, we are trying to all collaborate and just give them an opportunity, the resident, to be safe and secure while maintaining dignity and autonomy.
And that's so important, especially the dignity portion, is that when families take their loved ones outside of their home, knowing that it is such a pivotal transition to a new place that's can be scary, could be terrifying, and there's an incident that occurs, and given their cognitive abilities, they may not fully understand exactly what is happening other than they are in a new environment. And so when a family walks in, Mary Beth, and they sit down to talk about the move, the transition, the amenities that Olney Memory Care offers, what are some of the questions that you hear often? What are some of those pressing issues that families want to know up front before they decide to commit their loved one to moving into your community?
They want to know a bit more about the community in terms of the experience and training of the staff, if we're qualified, how qualified we are here in the community, what it's going to look like. They come in, they're usually, when they're coming in the first time, they will come for a visit, and we'll go into our memory care community so they can see, is someone going to be able to help mom get dressed in the morning? Like, she might be able to shower fine or something, but can she be dressed? It all depends on what they have learned through their research. Usually they're doing some research before they come in. So usually they kind of know from looking and talking around. But then often there's a question like I had recently, like, what exactly happens? And a lot of times, someone's coming in from an independent living situation where the family's been caring and they don't know what that day is going to look like. Who's caring at what part of the day? Will someone be there to help mom in the morning? Dad gets a little stressful, or sundowns in the afternoon. How do you care for the person then? They really want to get a sense of what we offer and how we're going to provide that care, because it's a big decision. I don't think anyone goes along having a parent and says, oh, you know what, I can't wait till I put them in an assisted living or in a memory care community. It's something that there's guilt with, and I understand that, but they really want to be reassured that their loved one can be taken care of. And what we also tell them is, you can be the son or daughter now. You don't have to stress out when you're coming home from work and making dinner and taking care of mom and dealing with either the forgetfulness or some of the wandering that happens. Things just keeping an eyes on mom or dad. We're here. And so that, lifts a burden from the family. And I think of my grandma thinking she didn't want to be a burden to anybody. And of course they're not to us, but they're not to us, but I think the families are looking really for the support and the help, and they get that sense of relief and the fact that they can now enjoy that part of the relationships that's more than just the caregiving part. So they need to be comfortable with who's giving that care.
That's a great point. And you bring up so many other salient points in families, in how they make their decisions and how they walk through that logic and that process. I know that we're experiencing this really firsthand.
Yeah.
With my own family. My grandmother has been diagnosed with a form of Alzheimer's since 2010, and we have watched the progression over the last 10 years. And it's really hard to watch. It's really tough because you see a once vibrant woman who was born in the 30s and grew up through the 60s and was just an absolutely amazing person, that slowly by slowly, day by day, you see pieces of their personality just chipped away. And it's difficult. And my mother is the only child in our family. I'm the only grandchild. I'm the only grandchild to my grandparents. So there's a lot of expectations. And since my mom thankfully lived close by to my grandparents, who are 94 and 87 respectively, she becomes a full-time caregiver. And I have to say, we've had a couple of moments where mom is burnt out. My stepfather is burnt out. It's really, really hard because my mom feels such an obligation, a sense of, I have to do this. I have to make sure that my mom and dad are cared for. They refuse to take them into a memory care community. And I understand it, because care for everyone is very different. It's a process. Some people want to age in place inside of their home, but when they get to a point where they can no longer do that, or they're no longer safe, that's a really tough conversation with family members. What would you say to someone like my family? And this is going to be really personal to me today, this discussion. At what point do you say, I think it's time that you consider additional care? Is it after an assessment? Do you have perhaps a nurse come into their home and assess their condition, and you have a checklist of behaviors that you say they certainly meet all this criteria, that they would be a perfect applicant, or so to speak, of Olney memory care. How does that process work?
Well, Ryan, I think you were correct, and it is very personal, and every situation is very different. My family is similar to your family in that, my parents cared for my grandmother and grandfather, and, never imagined that they would need to locate a place for them because they were going to provide that care. But at the same time, there are situations where that is not feasible. Um, Today we're having a lot of folks that are dual income families, and there's not someone to be able to really safely take care of that person 24 hours a day. There is sometimes, the resident per se, that the candidate as a resident doesn't want somebody sitting right there with them, waiting for them to need something. They believe that's a waste of time. So why are you here? What are you doing here? I don't need you here. And so sometimes that makes for increased agitation for families and for the resident themselves. So it's all very personal, and the decisions really have to be made independent of anyone else or anything else. The decisions really, kind of are weighed on how much independence is needed. What do the finances look like around the situation? Because unfortunately, that is a huge factor. Sometimes we share with families, it's a great idea to provide, supplemental support with an organization like CarePlus, for several hours a day. But there may come a time that, it's 24 hours a day, and that cost is much more than what they are comfortable in providing. So then the decision, or the conversation then turns to, what other options are there? So I think we collaborate very nicely in the sandbox per se, from home health to, to assisted living and memory care. So it's very much a personal decision, and I don't know that you really can check a box per se to figure out when it's that right time.
Every family is certainly unique, and all memory care communities are different. And their staff, the day-to-day operations, technology, care techniques, they vary. And it's important for any family member who is responsible for locating a memory care community that the requirements and services that they align with their loved ones' needs. Every person is unique, and every memory care community has to serve individual needs. There's not a one-size-fits-all care, as
Right.
I have personally seen with
Right.
especially with Olney. Everybody is very different. Everybody is in a different place in their journey
And
with.
And Ryan, what I was going to add was, I think the biggest thing is that family members and people that are making those decisions get the information that they need. I think the most important thing is to educate yourself on what are the options, because there are lots of different options, from financial options to different types of environments, different agencies that can provide support. It's a vast industry to try to navigate on your own, and in a crisis mode. So it's super important to educate, prior to the time that you need those situations.
So what are some of the resources that you know of that families can use prior to even picking up the phone or sending an email inquiry? Where do they find this information specifically about beginning the process of finding a new home for mom or dad?
So one of the organizations that, that I refer to very frequently is really the Office on Aging. Montgomery County or any county that you're in has, departments that are, dedicated just to seniors and aging. And there you can get, anything from how to sell your mom's home to, home care to legal estates and trusts. I mean, there is literally someone that is able to give you information on almost any topic. And from there, you kind of narrow that down. Once you get your generalized information, then you really can kind of hone in on exactly what that topic is that you're looking for. But the Ombudsman's office, the Office on Aging is typically where I would direct people to start with.
That's a good resource, especially in Montgomery County. They have a wealth of information to share, and they're accessible. And of course, the Commission on Aging too. They do quite a bit of work with our aging seniors. And when families approach Olney Memory Care or any memory care, what do you find? Is it referral based where somebody says, really, you should check out Olney Memory Care, or do they come to you by way of Google or simply by a quick search elsewhere, maybe social media? How do they find you?
A lot of times it's a Google search. Yeah, everyone's got their technology and they can get information easily over the phone. You just Google memory care near me and immediately it's all going to pop up on a map. So a lot of times it's that. We we work closely with nursing and rehabilitation centers that when, as we talked about earlier, someone's had a crisis, a fall or something and is getting ready to be discharged. There's times when the social worker or case manager says, they can't go home safely unless you have 24-hour care for that person. We can't discharge them. And that's when they start to look at other opportunities. So they can, social workers, other professionals can be a good source of information, as well as care managers make those referrals as well.
Yeah, care managers are very impactful in determining what communities and working with you, Mary Beth, and you, Carrie. They're fantastic, and Montgomery County has some very knowledgeable caregivers and social workers and discharge planners, especially in skilled nursing. And we're all community partners here, so we all talk to them, and that's important because my knowledge base, since I've been with CarePlus, has increased pretty exponentially since I got on board. I've learned a lot about memory care. I've taken a TIPA snow course, and just the techniques that we learned there at that course back in November was just really important. It was so important about how to interact with someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia. You mentioned cost. Of course, that's a major consideration. And when families sit down to talk about their budget, this is also life altering. They may have to sell mom or dad's home to pay for this, or if they don't intend to sell the home, they could take out a reverse mortgage, or there's multiple avenues to make sure that they pay for this cost. And that's always a concern. And we know that Montgomery County, it's a very wealthy community, but still people struggle with sometimes paying for memory care. Do you notice that there are among your residents, is long-term care insurance, is that prevalent?
There's a fair number that do. And for the age of our residents now, for our population, those were probably the folks that were on the leading edge of long-term care, and the policies have changed over the years. I can't speak to details, but yes, that is a very helpful way to help pay for the care.
Okay.
Because memory care is, assisted living is a private pay.
Yeah,
Responsibility. And yeah, so long-term care will help with that. In addition to whether the candidate has worked for the military, that's something that also helps, or their spouse, because there are benefits to be had there as well that can help.
I want to talk about ethos and your overall approach to care at Olney Memory Care. Carrie is the executive director. You set the pace, you set your expectations amid your staff, and you really have set a tone about your community. How do you do that? What is Olney Memory Care's ethos? How do you set a general work environment for your employees? What are your expectations for them?
So here at Olney Memory Care, we actually are an artist community, and we follow the artist philosophy. Treasuring people's uniqueness. Appreciating their personal situations. That is the expectation that we are going to meet those very individual and personal those personal needs. We have our care partners are trained with specialized training. They have their 5 hours when they come in, but many of our care partners are certified dementia practitioners, and the expectation is that they are going to go above and beyond and do a very independent care service plan for each resident.
So when a family comes and sits down at your table and your conference room, and they are ready to make a decision, what are some of the questions that you would expect family members to make or to ask rather when they are sitting down with your team? What do you hear most often?
What's my mom or dad going to do all day? What is a day structured like?
Mm-hmm.
And part of our ethos and being part of artists is the artist way. And that is the A in artists is the ability to have a voice. And Carrie mentioned treasuring the uniqueness. So typically they're asking about socialization and programs that you offer that can help mom or dad be engaged, because that social engagement is important in terms of someone with dementia. I mean, it's important that they are not isolated, that they stay engaged. That's good for their brain and for their overall mental health. Mm-hmm. And so typically questions what they're going to do, where they're going to eat. Do I have to eat at a certain, does my mom or dad have to eat at a certain time? They're a late riser.
Certain tables, are there assigned seats? Yeah.
Yes, whether you have to sit at the same place every day. My mom's kind of shy, she may just stay in her room all day. She's used to being alone at home. Is that going to happen here? And, they want to know how we're going to go about engaging their loved one in their day to keep them active and encourage them to be social. What are the visiting hours? That's a very common one. Just like what time they get up is flexible and they're all unique. We don't have specific visiting hours. They're their family. And so they have access to their loved one whenever they want. They can call, they can. So it's really, this is their loved one's home.
Is Olney Memory Care or other memory care communities, is it strictly for anyone who has memory-related issues, or can someone who is perhaps not quite there yet with memory issues and looking for an assisted living, do you accept those folks as well?
So, Ryan, a lot of the folks, well, all of the folks do have to have a diagnosis of dementia. Now, we know that there are very early stages of dementia as well as the very, progressed and late stages of dementia. And again, it's very, it's a very personal decision for family members based on, when is the right time to make that decision. There are opportunities for them to come in if they have, really early stages of dementia, if indeed they are having unsafe type of behaviors. It could be something like, they are walking out into the yard in the middle of the night. During the day, they may be safe. But in the evenings, they have some sundowning issues and they're no longer safe. And so it is, again, very personal, and the decision is made based on the situation at hand. So to answer your question, I think it could be as early as or as late, as is needed.
I'm sure families talk about staffing, about ratios, day and night, about individualized care plans, about nursing as well. Can you speak to that specifically to Olney Memory Care?
Sure. So we use a really unique staffing plan. We do have care partners that are our certified nursing assistants, and they're the ones who do provide a good bit of our care. And those are the folks that we can use for our ratios, which for memory care during our daytime hours is 1 to 8. But in addition to that, and we don't count in those numbers, often are the medication technicians, the charge nurses, the life enrichment coordinators and staff. Those are all added people that are here in the resident's home day to day that actually contribute to the day and are part of the engagement and the socialization. And so when we talk about a ratio per se, it is really very high for Olney Memory Care, higher than many communities where I have been. In addition, we also have, and I think is super unique. I've done this business for 24 years, and I've never had a position called our Director of Artist Way Experience. And we just got named, yeah. We call it our doll. And this person is, their job exclusively is to be a liaison between families and residents, making sure that all of those philosophies and the engagement and the adventures ultimately that a resident has every single day, they're unique and they're very personal. And positive, yeah, and so that's that's just added folks that we have in our staffing pattern.
Families, I'm sure, ask about what is the safety, what is the procedures, how do we make sure that mom and dad don't wander out the door. Most I would think all memory cares are locked. They are secured. You can't go back into the memory care community from the foyer of your office without a passcode. All of the CNAs who are assisting the residents at Olney are they have the passcode as well, and so. Families want to know, is mom or dad going to be safe and secure? Are there medical services available? What about visiting physicians? What about emergency alert systems? If they go outside, how do they ensure that they won't wander off the property? What is that? How do you do that, so to speak?
It's a pretty complex system. To be honest, I have had firsthand experience with it over the last several days. We had a lightning issue a couple of days ago, and so I've learned a lot about our security system and how it really is almost foolproof. like I said, we had a lightning strike, and we have electronic mag doors, which lock the entire building. And anytime one of those is opened, it sends an alarm to each one of the neighborhoods and to our main front office. And so literally, if a door is unlocked, it is alerting to that. In addition, we have a huge courtyard that also is, I think they're 12-foot fences around with walking paths, and they're also secured with coded gates and security on those gates, in addition to the security on the doors. So it is definitely a very secure environment. Even the fact that it got hit by lightning, it did not fail. There were backup systems that prevented its failure, and so there was no breach. And yeah, it's pretty complex, but highly effective.
Mary Beth, and I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Just add to that, we started having once a quarter in January a first responders breakfast.
Huh.
And so first quarter was the only time we were able to have one because of COVID and not allowing visitors into the community. But we had a lot of our police force, our local police force here at breakfast time. It's a quiet time, I guess, in this district in the morning. And they were incredibly impressed. They're very experienced, and they were incredibly impressed with how secure the community was. They saw our yard and the fences and, just the access they needed to go through to get back to where we were having our event in the neighborhood center. And they were just really impressed because I don't know about you, but I get on Twitter, I follow the police, and I get these alerts, that so-and-so has been missing, is, wandering. And you see those all the time. And just, they were impressed. And I'm so thankful that we are as safe as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see the silver alerts? Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the silver alerts. I follow those with Montgomery County Police all the time, and it's a sigh of relief when somebody is found safely.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that could trigger a response from a family to say, I think it's time that we look at alternative options for our mom or dad.
Absolutely.
Families want to know, as you mentioned earlier, about amenities and about features. Many memory care communities offer a variety of these amenities, and they want to be able to for their loved one to benefit from these. What about pets and music therapy and stimulation, art, different activities? What do you offer?
So we run the gamut. We have a full day of programs for our residents. Things have changed in terms of our programming while we've been going through this pandemic. But we talked earlier about the questions that the families ask when they come in. And part of our discovery, and it's because of the way that we live life here, the artist way, is trying to really get to know more about that resident. What did they do? What was their job? What did they like to do before they had dementia? What are they engaging with now? What makes them light up? We want to make sure that we have, as part of those programs, something for every one of our residents. Not every day, obviously, because we have 64 suites here. We can't rotate that, that would be every 20 minutes or so to a different, but logistically, but we make sure that whatever we offer programming wise includes that music. If it's ballroom dancing, if it's pet therapy in terms of bringing in, I was out in the field one day and came back and there had been animals, and I think there was a pig we had all sorts. We had a snake, dogs, cats, you name it. They were in with our residents in one of the programs. We allow pets to come in. We know which one of our residents don't like dogs, and so we will keep a dog away, but families can bring in their pets.
Ah.
And some of the staff can too, because our residents really respond. Who can't nurture an animal?
That's true.
Most people can. So, and they've been used to caring for others until they've, reached their later years, and just, you can get that emotional connection. And, it's amazing what you can see. Someone who walks and does laps around our community every day sees a dog and usually doesn't say anything, but says, "Oh my gosh, a dog," and stops to pet the dog. And you just get those amazing responses.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that.
Another question I would imagine families ask is, do you have experts on staff? Do you have trained professionals who clearly understand how to interact and communicate with mom or dad who has been in this condition and it's getting worse for years? What would be your response?
Many of our leadership team do have credentials through the NCCDP for certified dementia practitioners. We have folks that have done specialized nursing training for memory care or taken classes very related to that. I am an instructor for dementia, and so we have folks that do in-services a couple of times a month, as a matter of fact. Always trying to figure out what is new, what is trending, what is old that maybe we just need to remember. There's always something to learn. And so just through observation, through different situations, different behaviors that we observe, that's how we make sure that our staff are really at the forefront of dementia and how to manage those situations.
And I imagine that you see many success stories with family members who are going through a crisis, and their family member moves into Olney Memory Care, and they see them thrive there. And I'm sure that is just such a rewarding part of your job and part of your career, is to see people who are now in an environment where they're getting increased care and they're just really living out, and their quality of life is so improved. Is there any certain experiences or specific moments that you don't have to mention any names, but that you would be able to share?
Yeah, I actually have one in particular that it still hits me pretty hard. I had only been here about 3 weeks or so, and we had a resident who had been here and unfortunately did succumb to the coronavirus. And she was young, she was vibrant, she was beautiful, she just had everything going for her. And that's how we saw her. But the son saw her in a very different light. He shared with me after she passed in a very private conversation, an emotional private conversation, that he had in the recent years seen his mom as a victim. She was a victim to dementia, and she was a victim to her home. And when he moved her here, his quote was, "I've never seen her dance." And I still get goosebumps when I think about it. He meant literally dance, but I also believe he meant figuratively, because she did truly thrive. She made friends that that still miss her now. I mean, they talk about her, and our staff think about her and talk about her, and yeah, so that one hit me pretty hard. I'd only been here a couple of days, really, and to know that that this organization made that kind of impact on someone. For me, I knew I was in the right place, and that you can be passionate about something or a place to help with your loved one.
I think we all get into senior care or the business of caring for families because we're problem solvers, or at least I try to be, and I'm empathetic that I always try to put myself into the shoes of other families who are going through crisis or need an advocate. And I don't necessarily see my role at CarePlus as someone that develops business or manages or markets. I mean, of course, and sales, um, that's also technical. That's
Yes.
also corporate. Um, I'm an advocate for senior citizens, or I'm an advocate for families. That's what
Yep.
I do every day. I give them resources. I take phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning with scared parents
Yep.
who might be worried about their loved one. I take phone calls at at 6 a.m. when I'm just waking up from uh, adult sons and daughters to say, look, I'm really worried about my mom or dad, and my job, my career is to be able to advocate for people who don't have a voice, for people who have memory care, and that's all of us. And I think that that's what really binds us together
Yeah.
as an elder care community. We're so much more than a contract. We're so much more than what our website says. We're so much more than just
Yeah.
a simple brochure that you hand out or a marketing visit. We are human beings that love this job and love what we do, and we take increasing value every day out of that. And I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations. I want to give families resources that they can look at and say, well, I watched this video today and I saw Olney and CarePlus talking about these. Now I have a better sense of what to ask and how to approach the community, because we never know what the next moment might be for a family who's experiencing this. And there's thousands of people every day all across the world who are going through similar questions and similar scenarios. And it's all deeply personal. And I just want people to know that as well. This is all so deeply personal.
It is, Ryan, and going back to how do people learn of us? Some it's on the internet, some it's from their neighbors or
Mhm.
friends. Um, you can't, just like our job positions, you can't just look at the words.
Mm,
You
yeah,
have to really know who's behind
You have
it.
to feel
And
it.
so, when you're looking for care for your loved one, you need to visit. You can't compare communities based on their amenities and what the rooms look like, because you can have the most beautiful community and you walk in and you get a fit. It's almost like picking out a college when you're going to a college. Um, just feeling that sense of this is right. You need to feel it. There's a lot of emotion. This is so deeply personal, and there's a lot that you need to experience, because you can't make that decision and know that it's the right place for your loved one without really getting to know who is there.
that's
What's it like? What are the residents like?
such a great point, Mary Beth and Carrie, is that, and the biggest lessons that I have learned over my life, and I'm 34 years old, is what
Young.
changes me. Wow, yeah, is that what changes you as a person is, as you said, Carrie, you have to feel something. You really have to experience something, and when that happens, I think it changes you. And when you walk into a memory care community or an assisted living or a skilled nursing, and you feel something either positive or negative, we make decisions on that. And as someone like myself, who I always try to make decisions on logic and reason and take my time, it doesn't always work with that, especially when it comes to your loved ones. And we've experienced that. We had our own crisis last week where my grandmother was in the hospital twice in one day, and she spent the night. She was feeling terrible last Thursday, and they took her to the hospital. There obviously was some event, and this was up in Hagerstown, and they discharged her once. She came back. My wife and I were at up in Hagerstown at my grandparents' home, and we saw my grandmother. My mom walks in the door. My grandmother's walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden she just falls back, and she basically collapses in my arms. It was so scary. I mean, I still think about this moment from last week. We call the ambulance. We take her back out to Meritus. We're dealing with COVID in the midst of this. And then on top of that, they admit her overnight, and you can't stay overnight. My mom could not stay. My mom is her primary caretaker, primary caregiver, could not even stay overnight with my mother, with her mother. And having someone there, fortunately, they did have a hospital advocate who is skilled in Alzheimer's, was able to come in and check on her and talk to her in a way that she would understand. But we need people. If you're not able to do this job, or if you ever for a moment think, I just can't do it anymore, then, you have to love this job. You have to really, really care and understand that crisis moments are happening all the time, and we just have to be there for people.
I had a family member share with me, the care partners that are at Olney, they don't care for my mom. They care about my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that resonated really strong, because that's so true. We can care for anyone. I can assist someone with a shower. I can administer medications. I can put on their shoes. But if I don't care about them, then I can't match their shoes, and I can't, make them look beautiful. If I don't care about them, then none of that happens. And that's the feeling that we're talking about.
That's so true. And we go through at this point and this stage of my grandmother's life, it's really about maintaining that dignity that she had, and making her feel beautiful, talking to her and telling her that, and showing her pictures and telling her she's such a beautiful person, and doing small things and small gestures. That's those critical moments that we'll never get back, and that we cherish every opportunity that we have. And it's, again, especially with women and men, of course, it's maintaining that dignity, is giving them a reason and a purpose to keep trucking along, and for family members too. And as we wrap up this discussion, and it was fantastic, and I think that there's a lot of really excellent content that families can use when making decisions for memory care in the future, is that how do they communicate with the staff there? What is that like? Because I know that many families are going to want to check in and see progress reports. How does that work?
So certainly families are entitled to and free to call or, get in touch with the building at any time, 24 hours a day. Again, as Mary Beth said, there's no visiting hours, there's no check-in hours. They're free to do that as they wish. We do encourage families to try and get in touch with the management team, so that we can help coordinate those conversations, simply because our frontline staff are doing what they're supposed to be doing and working on the front line, and they don't spend a lot of time on the phone. So that is the anytime moments. But then we also have a lot of times that we do scheduled meetings and scheduled checkups for families to have an opportunity to voice their care, or their care concerns, or their care praises. I mean, there's a lot of times that, they're like, I just want to sing the praises of Joe. And, so they have those opportunities as well. Yeah. As always, I welcome them to call myself and the Director of Health and Wellness, to communicate, concerns, praises, anything like that.
I'm sure you're used to a lot of Zoom meetings around this time.
Yes.
You've both become
a lot of FaceTimes.
Yes.
A lot of that. Yeah, exactly. And we could have a whole separate conversation on administering care during COVID, and we'll save that for another time. How do people in our community, how do our friends and neighbors get in touch with Olney Memory Care?
So you can call us directly. They can call us directly at 301-570-0525. You can look us up at www.olneymemorycare.com. We are officially Olney Assisted Living, but our web address is olneymemorycare.com. We have a place on our website where you can get in touch with us, and someone will direct you right to speak with someone on staff. If you're going through a little web chat where you get the box and the nice lady pops up, You can get in touch that way. If you know one of us, I mean, I take a lot of calls on my cell phone. We all do outside of hours. It's this type of business. So calling the office or reaching out through the internet is probably the best way. And, lots of times we're being referred if families are asking their social worker or case manager when it's time to discharge. They'll get the information from them as well. But it's easy to find us online, and we're right off Georgia Avenue, right above the ICC in Olney. So we're back behind some trees, but we're here, and even we're open. Our office is open from 9 to 6. Open, I say not during a pandemic, but before this we were welcoming drop-ins, but now we have to maintain our social distancing and no one can come in. But I did talk to somebody outside yesterday in the parking lot.
Oh,
To answer some questions. Yeah, there's lots of ways to reach us.
that's great. And
So come by and ring the doorbell.
Definitely, please. And as you said, right off of 97, you can't miss where Olney Memory Care is. It's literally right there on the main road. And I know that I am hoping, especially with the technology and the medicine at our disposal, in our lifetimes, I am confident that we will cure this god-awful disease. I really believe that. I think that we will have some partial cure, or at least a way to truly and deliberately and exponentially slow this disease down and understand, as our leading scientists have, at a greater degree. And I'm hoping that at the end of my lifetime, we will have solved and resolved this. And I know there's a lot of people working, especially in the state of Maryland, where we have NIH and some of the leading and best scientists in the world. So my confidence is in our medical community to make that happen. But in the meantime, we still have to provide excellent care for our aging family members. I really appreciate this discussion today. It's informative, it's helpful, and I think that it will assuage some of the concerns from people on the outside who are unfamiliar with this process. It's and it's daunting, it's scary. It really is. And and folks like you and Carrie and Mary Beth and many others in our outer community, we are here as advocates for the community, and we can be reached at any time to talk you through this and to help you through a crisis moment. So thank you for doing this afternoon. This was great.
Thanks, Ryan, so much.
Our pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting us.
Absolutely. And once again, I want to remind everyone that June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, and you can contact your local Alzheimer's association if you want to get involved and to volunteer. And there's always caregiver support groups in the community. Caregivers are equally as important in this whole process. So I would encourage anybody who wants to learn more information to please reach out and to tap into those other resources. So again, Carrie, Mary Beth from Olney Memory Care, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Ryan.
You too.